Well,
All
let's
right.
go back to Chelsea Van Pelt. She's going to go through the NIH Other Support. She is our subject matter expert from Health Sciences. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you, Jill. Today we are going to touch on NIH Other Support. So what is the definition of NIH Other Support? Sometimes other support is referred to as current and pending support, or active and pending support. So you'll hear kind of a couple terms for it. And the information on other and pending support may be requested at just in time, or it will be collected for the progress reports, RPPRs. This is for NIH to ensure that there is no scientific, budgetary, or commitment overlap. So active and pending support is research funding that is either active or pending, which means when it's pending, it means it's pending a review or an award on which key person shows effort. Now, keep in mind your PI is going to be the best one to determine what his or her actual pending support is. So always review the pending support with your PI to ensure that the grant is still pending, that it is pending either a score or maybe a notice of award is coming in. So all resources made available to a researcher in support of and or related to all their research endeavors, regardless of whether or not they have monetary value. So maybe your PI has effort on a project, but there's no salary derived from there, that would still need to be listed. And regardless of whether they are based at the institution, the researcher identifies for the current grant. So if the PI has a joint appointment with another institution, they still need to list all those sources in research funding. So all financial resources, whether federal, non-federal, commercial, or institutional, that are available in direct support of an individual's research endeavors, including but not limited to research grants and contracts, cooperative agreements, institutional awards, and keep in mind that other support does not include gifts, prizes, donors, equipment grants, training grants, discretionary funds, or domestic LSAs. And pay close attention to the domestic LSAs, and we will touch on that further, but anything foreign would need to be listed because it's foreign, but we do not need to include domestic LSAs. So what is NIH wanting to do here? So NIH reviews other support to ensure that there is no overlap of scientific goals, no overlap of financial support, and no overcommitment of person months for key personnel. Keep in mind that your PI or any other senior key personnel listed on a project cannot exceed 12 calendar months. Always double check and add up all of their calendar months under active to ensure that this does not exceed 12. If it exceeds 12, please work with them accordingly to reduce. NIH Other Support can be requested and or submitted at just in time, which would be for a competing application, standard notice if the impact score is 30 or less, regardless if it will get funded or not. Now keep in mind, a PI will receive an automated email once their application has passed peer review. This notice does not invite them to submit a formal just in time. Wait till they've had the formal request from their GMS in order to submit this. So a lot of times PIs get confused, but just a little tip there, wait till they've had the formal request from their GMS. And also at the RPPR phase. So these would be for non-competing applications. Changes in active other support occurs during the progress report period. So if you're working on your progress report and you notice that there have been no changes since the last reporting period, then you would not need to update their other support and you would indicate that there have been no changes. If there are changes since, maybe a grant has been awarded since then, or a grant has ended since then you want to report those changes and note those things. And always review your previous year's other support to compare the two. So if you did a just in time and now you're working on your year one progress report, you would review the other support submitted at just in time. If you're in years, like 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you're doing your progress report, always review the prior year RPPR other support to determine if a change was made since the last time. So instructions and templates for both can be found on NIH's website. So keep in mind that the just-in-time is for, the other support format page for new and renewal applications is submitted for just-in-time. And then for progress reports, that's the RPPR. And they have blank templates and also instructions there. Okay, so let's review other support at the just-in-time phase. So other support sections for just-in-time include active, so research project awarded and not expired, pending, research project submitted but not awarded or rejected, and again, always confirm with the PI on what's truly pending. And overlap. Are there any scientific goals, financial support, and/or effort commitment that would duplicate proposal under review? Explanation is required. Your PI will be able to indicate whether there are any scientific goals. Any financial or effort commitment would be made by the fund manager, and to determine whether there is commitment overlap. We see this a lot. If a pending application is going to be funded, say the PI is committed at 2 calendar months, but they're currently already maxed out at their effort, we would need to review their effort to determine where they can reduce accordingly to fit into that 12 calendar months with the pending grant should it be funded. If there is no overlap, scientific, financial, or any effort commitment, then you would simply put none. So here is an example of NIH Other Support. Always include active first. And then we are going to break it out by domestic and foreign. So we're going to list all the domestic grants first. And you want to include the full grant number with the current year. The PI is in parentheses. Now keep in mind, if it's a multi-PI grant, then you would list all the last names in parentheses. The source of support. The title of the project or grant. And you're going to list the entire project period, not the budget year. The person month. The major goals. And the major goals is information that only the PI can provide. What is their role on the project? Are they the PD, PI? Are they a co-investigator, etc.? So always put their role, whatever it was indicated at the time of submission. You're going to list the current total cost. And you're going to list the entire period total cost. Keep in mind, this is a new change since July of 2019. So both of these items are now required. Foreign support on other support. If a PI has any grants that are with a foreign entity, they need to be listed and broken out under foreign active support. So they would not be listed under domestic, they would be listed under foreign. And foreign components will be covered further in the slides by Erica Wilson. but report all current projects and activities, even if their support received is only in kind, office laboratory space, equipment, supplies, or employees. And remember here, it's always better to over-report than to under-report. NIH requires full transparency and full disclosure when it comes to any funding sources that PI must or may have when it's regarding foreign support. And all research resources, including but not limited to foreign financial support, research or laboratory personnel, lab space, any scientific materials, selection to a foreign talent or similar type program, or other foreign or domestic support must be reported. Like I said, it's always better to over-report here than to under-report. Pending and overlap. So we're going to list pending under active grants, so that's going to be the next section down, and do not include the application being considered. Also, do not include UCSD startup packages. And then list if there's any overlap. So again, scientific, budget, or effort. If there is no overlap, simply state none. Do not include gifts, prizes, donors, equipment grants, training grants, or discretionary funds, or domestic LSAs like we discussed in the previous slide. Okay, so progress report, RPPR, other support. So what are the differences? So on an RPPR, we do not list pending. And we also list the award we are working on. When we do just-in-time other support, we do not list inactive, and we do not list the award you are working on. So while they're similar, they're also very different. An RPPR is active and inactive, and just-in-time is current and pending. So RPPR progress report, let's note the differences. So the format is the same as the just-in-time with these added annotations. New. So what has come in since the last progress report was submitted? This award. Include the award for which the progress report is being submitted and include the effort that will be devoted in the next reporting period. Foreign support on other support. Again, you're going to break it out between domestic and foreign and report all current projects and activities, even if the support received is only in kind. Again, this will be covered further down the slides by Erica Wilson. And again, these are all the research resources that need to be included. And again, if you do not have, if the PI does not have any foreign support, you can simply just list none. So on an RPPR, like I said, we do not list pending, we only list inactive grants. So this would be inactive since the last reporting period. So you always want to review either the prior other support that was submitted at just in time if you're working on the year one progress report, or the previous year progress report to indicate what has expired since the last reporting period. You would simply just cut and paste that into inactive and note that it was inactivated with the dates and the information. And also you want to note any applicable overlap. Is there any scientific budget or effort? And again, if none, state so. And like I mentioned, this would be inactive since the last RPPR was submitted. So what are the do's and don'ts of other support? Do list other agreements, resources, and significant collaborations. Do not include gifts, prizes, donors, equipment grants, training grants, or discretionary funds. And under a consortium or contractual arrangement, or that is part of a multi-project award, do make sure that you indicate the project number, the PDPI, and the source for the overall project, and provide all information for the sub-project only. So for instance, if my PI has a grant with, say, another university, I would list the source as the university's name / the prime institution. So for example, University of Cincinnati / NIH, NINDS could be the prime. So always, and then I would only indicate what my PI's portion of their direct and total cost dollars are. So make sure you pay close attention when you have a sub-project or multi-project. Another example could be a PI is a lead on a core, on a P30. We would only indicate that portion of the core for the PI. We would not list the entire grant funding, only the funding that is going to the PI. All right, so let's get into overlap next. So like I mentioned, there are 3 types of overlap. The first type is scientific. Scientific is the definition of scientific overlap is substantially the same research is proposed in more than one application or is submitted to 2 or more different funding sources for review and funding consideration. Or a specific research objective and the research design for accomplishing that objective are the same or closely related in 2 or more applications or awards, regardless of the funding source. Like I mentioned before, scientific overlap always needs to be confirmed by the PI, and he or she needs to justify that scientific overlap. Budgetary and commitment overlap. Budgetary overlap is duplicate or equivalent budgetary items. So for example, equipment, salary are requested in an application, but are already provided for by another source. And then commitment overlap. This is probably the most common type of overlap that I see. And this is when key or senior personnel time commitment exceeds 100% or equivalent to 12 person months. And whether or not salary support is requested in the application, you still need to track their effort on a project. So this is the one that again, like I mentioned, I see the most. So always make sure that you are managing your PI's effort so they do not overcommit themselves. And like I mentioned, we need to explain the overlap. So potential scientific, budgetary, and/or commitment overlap when submitting other support. And we need to also explain the resolution. So how are we going to solve the overlap? So address at the time of award in conjunction with the applicant institution, officials, the PDPI, and awarding agency staff. So we're going to explain the overlap and then also the resolution of the overlap. So an overlap sample, the PI should always address any scientific overlap. And here's an example of an overlap statement for commitment. So basically, you're going to state that the PI is overcommitted between an application from their current support and then the application under consideration. And then we always state if the application under consideration is funded with Dr. So-and-so committed at, say, 2 calendar months, how will they reduce their other support accordingly? So this will either require reducing by the 25% rule, or maybe a grant is going to end by the time this grant gets funded, or possibly you will have to go to the GMS and go to NIH or any of the other awarding agencies and reduce, make a formal reduction of effort request. So some notes on other support. Generally, you do not include the just-in-time grant to be listed in the pending section. However, we are starting to see that some GMSs are now requesting it. So I will, you can use your own discretion here, but at the time we would ask you to leave it off unless the GMS asks otherwise. And for individuals with no active or pending support, indicate none. So always have all the sections of the other support listed, and if there's nothing there to list, just simply state none. So what are some frequently asked questions for NIH Other Support? So question, do I have to submit other support for all key personnel on an RPPR? Answer, only if there is a change in active support and indicate the change. So I always recommend you request this or have the PI verify that there have been no changes since the last reporting period. So question, what should be noted for person months on an RPPR? Always list the anticipated person months in the next budget period. Question, is other support submitted at the time of a competing, so a new or a renewal application? Answer, only if the RFA specifically calls for it. Otherwise, no. We do not submit other support in an NIH application. This is only usually included for mentors on any fellowship or career applications. So what are the other support modifications as of July 2019? So one of the changes is NIH now requests the total award amount for current year. So previously, we always just included the direct cost for the current budget year. Now we need to include both the total award amount, direct and indirect, for the entire project, and total award amount for the entire budget year. Also, listing foreign affiliations. This is a huge requirement now from NIH, as we need to have full disclosure with NIH, and they want any foreign support that a PI has available listed to them. All right, you ready for a quiz? Let's take an NIH Other Support quiz. Can you find the 4 errors? Let's review. First error, no effort months listed. Remember, on a bio sketch, you would not include person months. On other support, it is required, so you would list the effort in the calendar month. Second error, note the end date on this grant. This grant should not be included in active. It should be removed, or sorry, it should be moved down to inactive if this is for an RPPR, or if this is for a just-in-time competing other support, then we would remove it altogether. Pending. This should not be pending, not recently, should be pending, sorry, not recently committed, I can't talk, completed research. And the overlap statement was missing. Like we mentioned in our previous slides, always include overlap even if there is none. All right, and that is it on other support.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, much appreciated.